Hey, I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to this channel. Give this video a like.
Do it right now. Check out the podcast below in the description.
Little basketball content for you, Middlecoff. Steph Curry asked on Monday about whether there's been discussions about a contract extension, which he could sign here before the season gets going. He says we have conversations. Everything's on the table right now. December 22nd is when the Warriors open against Brooklyn. That's when he could that would be the deadline to sign the extension. Bobby Marks wrote that the extension that he could sign is 3 for $156. That'd be the maximum. Which if you divide by 3, and well, actually it's not really divided by 3. He just said it would be $48 million, $52 million, $56 million. Steph still has 2 years left on his current contract, so that would be.
I'm no math major, but averaging about $52 million a year.
Yeah, yep. That would be. And then the other part of it is he could turn that down, or just they could not extend him. Whatever, they don't reach a deal by then. He could sign a 4-year, $215 max extension next offseason, which would again be around $54 million, and would take him through the year where he turns 38 years old. He's 32 right now, 33 in March.
You don't need to be in.
One other note, John.
What's that?
You want one other element here? Joe Lacob is about to pay an NBA record $300 million for his salaries this year with the luxury tax.
You don't need to be an economist major to realize that, one, just America, slippery slope right now in terms of the economy and the lockdowns and just what the ramifications are going to be the next several years with the shutdowns of businesses and poverty and just the way everything's going. I think the NBA is like that in a micro bubble where it's pretty clear economically they've gotten to a weird spot where the league is by no means doing as well as they have been. They have a television contract coming up. The prices of players are extraordinarily high because the amount of guys, when I saw De'Aaron Fox get a $170 million contract, and we don't even know if the guy's ever going to make an all-star team, I went, yeah, I think the league's in a weird spot.
Or the playoffs.
Steph, who is one of the more accomplished players, in league history, multiple back-to-back MVPs, 3 rings, fantastic player. In what world, if you're the Warriors, would you be thinking about giving him a contract extension with 2 years left at a rate that's huge? He's not underpaid anymore. He got the Supermax deal. But Steph, because if I was Steph's money guy, if I was Steph's agent, if I was in Steph's – they love saying this about basketball. They said basketball players and golfers both talked about the same. His team. Like his team.
His camp.
Yeah, he's on a fucking – he has his group – you mean his teammates? No, the 7 guys that are around him. Like they talk about like the guys around Ricky Fowler the same as they would Draymond or LeBron or Steph, like his camp, his team. It's like, no, he actually has a team.
Right.
But that's just part of the deal. And the NBA
word out of his camp is
they don't talk about that in baseball, and they definitely don't talk about that in football.
Nobody has a football. Your camp is the training camp, and your team is your wife and your kids.
Yeah, your wife, kids, maybe like a dad that played in the league, and like your agent. That's it.
Yeah, like the Bosas had a dad involved on their team, on their camp.
But that's the way basketball works, and I'd be pushing this. I go, Steph, this NBA season could be really weird. If we just, as we're recording this, the Michigan-Ohio State games are getting canceled left and right. I saw the other day in college basketball, maybe over the weekend, 35% of the games were canceled. It's just really difficult.
I've had 2 basketball games. Games.
How many college football games you had canceled?
One of my 6.
You've had
one of my 5 so far. I got one more this week, but
you've had 3 games canceled on you in a 2-week span.
2 out of a couple, a month and a half, but I've had 2 basketball games out of the 3 canceled.
So this season's going to be very hard to play.
Yeah.
And I think that 72 game, I would guess it might have a chance to get to like 50. The economics of the league are going to come back to earth. Like, I don't think it's random. Now, I think clearly LeBron, their team's good. He's with the Lakers. It makes sense. When has it ever been LeBron's MO to do a full-out contract extension before he has to? He never needs to. Even if he starts sucking, he's still LeBron James. The Lakers have proven with Kobe they would pay him. He signed that $85 million deal. To me, that was a pretty – and I'll give him one thing. He knows the money. Like, Money follows LeBron, and he did that. That was like, oh shit. He kind of knows that. Are the days of guys making $40 million in 5 years? Does it come back to like $20 million? And listen, $20 million is still a lot. But that contract you listed about Steph, if you could get, let's say the Warriors would give him 3 years at 42, 42 a year or something. Like, fuck.
Sign it.
That is much different
But
than the 3 years, 65.
You wouldn't offer that right now with 2 years left on the deal if you were the Warriors, would you?
No, I wouldn't offer him anything.
If he would sign
I'm not offering a contract extension.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. I don't even know if I do the LeBron, just because at least they're the Lakers. They just won. They have Anthony Davis. Like, if I'm the Warriors, I got way more unknowns. Listen, Steph played a handful of games last year. Like, it's terrible. But I completely understand why Steph wants a contract extension. It's all money, and he knows the money might dry up to the levels in which he's become accustomed to. The Warriors cannot sign this deal. They'd be nuts to.
I agree. I also think part of this sets up. It wouldn't. My prediction will be that at some point he will sign an extension with the Warriors. No, I'm not saying in the next few days or months.
I think assuming he plays well.
Yeah.
Right?
Just as long as he's healthy. My point is he'll have another Warrior contract. I think it is. At the end of the day, they do want him to be a Warrior. But to me, the only way that happens is if he takes less than whatever he actually can. I think he'll have to take less money than will be the maximum allowable amount. And Draymond Green's $25 million a year starts this season, his 4-year contract. I mean, yeah.
Do you know Klay Thompson? Klay Thompson is now in year 2 of the 190.
I do.
And he's
I know.
The Warriors in a weird spot are an economic disaster, given that they're surely not going to have any fans this year. The amount of money they lost at the end of last season, potentially if they miss the playoffs this year.
The amount of money they're spending on a roster that is not going to win them a championship this year.
And I don't think people know this, and it's not that, like, it's kind of stupid, but it's not stupid to Joe. They're like the Lakers. Their television deal is enormous. The Warriors, because they signed their deal, a decade ago, is on a much shittier deal than what they became. Like, they are not on the high end of getting just $50 million a year from Comcast. Like, they're just deal small relative to what it's going to be. So I think the Warriors went, if you told me the pandemic didn't exist, and even if Klay got hurt and they were going to make a ton, I'd be like, yeah, I could see the Warriors just giving Steph an extension. He'll be in his mid-30s. He'll translate well. He's their all-time great player. But I think with the economics being way up in the air, there's a reason Steph, once he was asked this question, went into a long soliloquy about, like, I believe in this place. I want to be here. Kind of put all his chips in the middle of the table. Like, it ain't me. I want to be here. Will they extend me?
Yeah,
part of Joe's like, yeah, we want to extend.
I do wonder if part of that is, hey, when I take 45, 42, 30, whatever the number is, just know I could have demanded 55, right? 52. Well, I do wonder if that's part of the psychology of it down the road.
Here's the elephant in the room, though, Guy. What if the next couple years he's a shell of his all-time great self, but he's still like, a borderline, an all-star, but like not the top 5 or 6 all-stars, but like one of the last 5 or 6 all-stars, and he's no longer a $45 million player.
Well, yeah, there's no question. I'm just saying, but he'll have to take. They just not going to, especially the cap is flat this year, right? It's 109.
There is a chance in 2 years he's a $20 million player, not a $50 million player.
I think unless he's willing to take a lot less money, he probably won't be on the team. I just think this might end with him taking a significantly lower number than what is maximum. Because here's the other thing: do
you think he signs an extension in the next 2 weeks?
No,
I don't. No, because the Warriors.
I'm not predicting. Yeah,
say let's just play it out. Yeah.
And I don't think no one's going to blame him for that. Not a soul.
Because he's still under.
Blame him for that.
No, he's still under contract for like $90 million the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Right.
But here's the other thing: is what's the market? If he's a $20 million player in 3 years, every other team is dealing with this too, with owners that are far less willing to go to this level financially than Joe Lacob has been willing when everything was great. So
yeah,
it's not like he's going to hit the mark.
He did not mention huge numbers or max contracts. He just mentioned he wants to be here. I just think he's throwing it out there like, hey, guys, I want to be here because it could get weird.
What I'm saying is the market for him at a $50 million teams aren't going to be throwing – no one's throwing that money around. Forget about just his own – his own team throws money around more than any other team when it comes to salaries. So what is his free agent number going to be? Even what close to what the Warriors max number is going to be? Is it going to be $45 million? No, not. Wasn't there?
Isn't there a
5
chance
years
at
old.
Isn't there a chance at 35 if he's diminished greatly and he's like, oh, he's still like maybe the last All-Star in, someone would overpay for the stardom, but still that's like 3 years, 80 million or something, right?
Yeah.
But like you said, look around the league, like it's plummeting, right? In terms of the max. Like, yeah, you can get those 2 years, $40 million contracts that get given away like candy. But I think the max contract, which he's talked about, Harden's talked about, like even James, who is doing who knows what right now,
Trying to get traded.
He turned down that 2 years, basically $102 million, which would have been the first $50 million contract. And he still has 2 years left. So basically, he would have signed a 4-year contract, like these 2 years left and then 2 years on top of that at like basically $200 million. He says no. I might say, James, he might just hate him so much and he's so rich it doesn't matter, and that's clearly the case. That is pretty risky. Like, there is a chance in 2 years there ain't a soul in the league. Maybe you've diminished, maybe you've gotten hurt. No one's giving you close to $50 million. Like, I would say probably a decent chance that was not a great financial move, because you can sign a contract and then demand out anyway.
Especially if the cap is, let's say it goes up a little somehow next. Let's be bullish and say that it goes up over the next 2 years, right?
If you had to guess, if the 72-game schedule, what would you guess most teams play? You agree they're not getting to 72, right?
Yeah, no, it's 70. It's because basketball teams are too small. It's not like a football team where you can miss 5 guys and it's no big deal.
And not everyone touches the ball. It's hard to. Feels like it would spread a little faster in basketball.
Yeah, but to me, it's just as simple as basketball. You travel with off days, so you have time to leave the hotel. Football, you don't travel with off days. You don't have time to do anything on a football road trip. Basketball, you spend 2 weeks on the road, so you've got all these off days. On top of that, all it takes is 4 guys to get it, and now your roster's greatly diminished.
Well, it's why most NFL coaches have said, in a weird way, their home base is their little bubble, because you're there most of the time. Then the guys just go home. You're not allowed to go anywhere else because you're getting home late anyway. It's not
we know. Yeah, exactly. We know what it takes for the NBA to play all their games. It's a bubble. That's what it takes. So I don't. It's hard for me to guess what the number is. I think they'll be better than college. College getting. I got to think they'll be able to get more games in.
Well, there is more incentive if you're an NBA player to be super focused for a paycheck.
Yeah. So, but 60 would feel. If you told me right now their teams play an average of 60 games, I would say that feels pretty good.
I would agree.
And then they do, their tournament in January, and then they do 30-team tournament for the playoffs.
Well, when I haven't read that much about it, but when I see like All-Star breaks, like, guys, what are you doing? There's no All-Star break this year. Maybe give them like 3 or 4 days off, but why would you want everyone going their separate ways? Like, there's just the one thing football doesn't do. There's no breaks. You got to plow through.
Yep.
But I already saw the comment is when LeBron. They're like, LeBron, what'd you think when you saw the December 22nd start date? And his comment was like, oh, shit, I was going to be on a family vacation. And it's like, God, LeBron, what world are you guys all living in? Like, we're trying to get this to make all the money. But I understand where he's coming. He doesn't need any of the money.
No, he doesn't.
But he wants the money. Yes. It's just the weird spot for a lot of these guys. Like, why does James Harden not give a shit? I don't know, because he has $200 million in the bank and none of this matters. Like, the NBA players, we've said this all along. I was talking to someone in the podcast business a week ago, and they're dealing with this pro athlete who's in the podcast business now. And a guy that I think most people would be like, yeah, I bet he's probably hard to deal with. He's like, you tell him a time, he's waiting for me on Zoom. His comment, I don't want to use the guy's name because it sounds like a slight, but this guy's really impressive. But if I just said the name of it, you'd be like, God, that guy's crazy. He'd be like, whatever you tell him, when do you need me? He's just very disciplined, because football players, they're very time sensitive, right? Meeting starts at 8. Breakfast is at 7. Lunch is from 12. It's very set up. Basketball is like, yeah, some guys get early to shoot. Other guys just do it their own. This guy doesn't like to practice. This guy. And I saw yesterday, Chris Haynes had this list of like, can't rest. You can't do all these things on the road. And my first response was like, good luck. Do you think the NBA players give a shit about their franchise getting fined $100,000, especially if it's a good one? Like, you see some of these comments about Kawhi and Paul George. Like, it's just stuff that would not happen in the NFL. And it happens in individual sports. And basketball, in a weird way, has become somewhat of an individual sport at the NBA level.
Yeah, it's become an individual sport probably before that, right? And we've talked about this for years. Was it Ethan, that wrote it, and people have talked about this, right? Like, your team is your endorsement deals because you're making more money from them. That's why you're taking, right? That's why Kevin can take less money with the Warriors, not because he's doing the Warriors a solid. I mean, actually, it worked out to be him doing, but it's just more about your flexibility and your personal ability to be nimble with your decision making once you're at a certain level of wealth is more important than necessarily getting the most that you can. It's not worth getting a little more, but it ties you up, right? It's not worth it.
No,